Good evening, everybody. This is Steve with Real Progressives. I haven't really talked to you guys much since this weekend, but we had a wonderful opportunity in Washington, D.C. to meet with the left, the real left in the United States, from Shama Swan, Jill Stein, Ralph Nader, David Cobb, the Green Party, Independents, Progressive Independent Party, Eric Halbloss. And we really took to the streets with the Occupy inauguration on Friday. Many of you all saw a lot of the footage that we put forward. We had guys right there on the front lines. It was an incredible experience. However, on Saturday, there was some interesting stuff going on here. We talked to Shama Swant last night, and she discussed the women's marches. And the women's marches, seem to embody a rainbow effect of individuals from very inexperienced young people who are getting their first experience at actually protesting, all the way across the board to professional, paid-for protesters and the celebrities that come out and just sort of say their piece and so forth. So with that, with no further ado, I want to bring my guest, Mike Sainato, on. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
No problem, man. So talk to me a little bit about this. Obviously the protests drew quite a number of people to the nation's capital. What do you make of it?
I think overall it was a historic and great thing that many people can get out and protest. But unfortunately, the reason people were coming out to protest, were varied and took away from, the focus on women's rights and women's issues. So that was being appropriated by celebrities, politicians. I saw a lot of Bernie people complaining that it basically looked like a Hillary Clinton rally because and an anti-Russian propaganda rally, because a lot of people took the opportunity to turn it into an anti-Trump, pro-Hillary event with Hillary Clinton posters and things of that nature, which is depressing. I don't know if you've read the book False Choices. It's a book by feminists on the left, their take on Hillary Clinton's hard choices. So it's a lot of feminist essays from socialist and left feminists about why Hillary Clinton's brand of feminism, the trickle-down feminism, one of them called it, just doesn't work. And it's this neoliberal, corporatized version of it, and it's kind of really watered down feminism. I published an article with my girlfriend, Chelsea, on Sunday, the Washington Post. I don't think a lot of people caught it because I think they changed the title, but they had an article that said, at the Women's March, men mattered the most. And I think, just that title alone shows how problematic, that issue was. Instead of focusing on women's rights and women's issues, they, basically watered down what feminism is supposed to be. It's supposed to be radical. And in order to, include all these anti-Trump protesters, and that's, where the message kind of got lost. And you saw people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz, speaking at that rally, Cory Booker making appearances, and these are people that are just exploiting it for their own personal gain. I saw a tweet that Cory Booker left the stage and was trying to take as many selfies as he possibly could. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz, why is she back out again? I think that was her first public appearance since before the convention, and she shouldn't be able to show her face. I was disappointed that people didn't boo her. I was expecting that. She came down here in Gainesville, Florida, to meet during the general election. I think it was September and October, and I was the only reporter there because it's Gainesville, Florida. But she met with Hillary Clinton volunteers and a couple Bernie Sanders supporters came into the little area that was being hosted and protested her. And I think hopefully if she does speak in the future, I hope people keep reminding her that, Bernie Sanders progressives, Bernie Sanders supporters aren't going to, forgive her, forget what she did to us and disenfranchised us. But to get back on track about the protest, I think it's a great thing. I like you said before in our conversation, it's the first time a lot of people are getting out to protest. And I wish the more protests, the better during Trump's presidency. But at the same time, we can't allow the Democratic Party establishment to appropriate these protests and, basically steal the message, steal the spotlight, and, take away what's trying to be done in these protests for their own political gain. And I think that's what we're going to have to see. People need to realize Trump and the Republicans who have the majority in Congress, they're our political enemies, but at the same time, the neoliberals, the establishment, they're still our enemies. They're not our friends. So unless you want to get back into the nominees, do you want to talk about that now? Or
I think let's just stay here for just a second because this is very important to me. Debbie, the same progressive, went out there and talked about managed dissent, how they allow these things. People are not actually doing anything. They're not actually, there's no demands. There's no actual follow through. A lot of people came there, heard some really good music, got to see some celebrities talk, but there was no plan for what to do next. It was just sort of like hey man, this is like the greatest open air concert of all time in the dead of winter. And so,
it was a symbolic effort. And that's it. Unfortunately, because all these establishment politicians and corporations and celebrities took it over for themselves, they watered down any message that could come from it.
Well, and I think it's very important. You said something very clear, and I think that a lot of people make this horrible, and I mean, it is a horrible mistake, that somehow or another, because Trump is bad, really bad, that the Democrats are somehow or another really good. And let's not forget, a minute ago, Cory Booker blocked the pharmacy bill, the lower cost prescription drug bill that Bernie Sanders had put forward. And now, even right this second, Elizabeth Drug Warren went ahead and co-signed Ben Carson. I mean, we're talking about flaky, worthless, like soggy, limp noodle Democrats that are absolutely as useless as a wet piece of toilet paper. I swear on my life. And they are absolutely as destructive as a cancer in the heart. I mean, I just don't know what to do here in terms of making the public wake up to realize that we need to either work outside the party or make legitimate, straight demands. I didn't see any. I just saw a lot of anger, a lot of name calling, which, again, I don't want to minimize the effect of seeing Americans take to the streets to do what is necessary to enact democracy. But what I saw was a whole lot of managed dissent. I saw an awful lot of people in pink pussy hats, as they call them, running around, being cutesy. In fact, I'll tell you, this is one quick story. On my way Saturday night, there was a panel. And in that panel, there was Jill Stein, Chris Hedges, Shama Sawant, Tim Canova, and a couple other people, individuals like Chase Iron Eyes, et cetera, that were speaking. And as I went outside to talk to somebody, there was a group of the pink hats walking by, and they looked up and they saw the Socialist Alternative sign, and they went, "Ew, socialist," and they kept on walking. And I mean, obviously, it's not all of them, but when you realize that these are people that still find the Republican ideology less toxic than the quote-unquote socialists, we've got a long way to go with these people. They are still sleeping with the lights on, man. They're out. They're like checked out completely.
Really, the Trump resistance, the resistance that they branded this anti-Trump movement has been really focused on Sanders progressives more than it's been focused on Trump. You saw that when Bernie praised the TPP Trump getting pulled out of that, establishment. Clinton supporters were quick to attack Bernie for even saying something, alleging that, he's working with Trump, while all these Democrats are voting in favor of Trump nominees. Although the Republicans have enough votes and Democrats don't have the ability to filibuster to actually oppose any of these nominees, because that's how far gone the Democratic Party is. But you can't justify. How can Elizabeth Warren, justify voting for Ben Carson, supporting Ben Carson? You have to justify that vote somehow. And the way she's done it is, I don't like some of his opinions, but I think he says he wants to do these things and blah, blah, blah. It's, you're spineless. You have no political will. And it's unfortunate that the Democrats have that. I mean, Bernie is one of the only few people who had that spine to stand up when no one else is really behind him. And obviously it's been a little bit depressing to see him more in outreach, but he's been getting some policy concessions. Yesterday there was an infrastructure bill the Democrats introduced, but it was Bernie's infrastructure bill. They introduced a $1 trillion infrastructure plan. It was Bernie Sanders' plan, but Bernie Sanders was right behind Chuck Schumer, who got to introduce the bill and tout it as the Democrats' bill, when all the Democrats were attacking that plan during the primaries and saying that Hillary Clinton's $275 billion infrastructure plan is better and more tangible and more practical. And even if they got to that point where they could push through that, Democrats like Schumer, like Warren, they cower to the middle ground. They cower to political where the power is. So where to the donors? They're not going to stand up and fight for anyone. They might make some speeches that makes them look good. They might
tweet wars.
Yeah, they'll ingratiate themselves with Bernie Sanders as much as it provides them with political gain. But at the second Bernie Sanders does something that might upset their donors or their fellow elitist bureaucrats, they're going to be abandoning him really quick. So
let's talk a little bit. So yesterday was a pretty historic day. Donald Trump, in a strike of a pen, approved the KXL pipeline, and he also went ahead and he didn't greenlight the Dakota pipeline, but he sent it back to the Army Corps of Engineers for the environmental impact study. Question, I hear the Democrats are actually trying to fundraise now off this, like they did something whatsoever to stop any of this to begin with. Talk about that, Mike, please, because this is so embarrassing.
I mean, if anyone paying attention to the primaries knew that Hillary Clinton eventually came out against the Keystone Pipeline. She never came out against the Dakota Access Pipeline, even after the general election, where she had nothing to lose politically for coming out in support of it. And if she did, it would have provided some much needed support for the water protectors before, a 21-year-old girl had her arm blown off, and protest escalated up until December 4th, when the Army Corps of Engineers basically put the decision onto Trump. Obama didn't really do anything to stop the pipeline. They just said, well, halt it for now, halt the route for now. And now what we're seeing is the review is getting put in place where that proposed route under Lake Oahe will most likely go through. What confused me, though, is a few days earlier, the Standing Rock Sioux tribe they actually, on January 20th, they voted unanimously to close all the water protector camps. This was before Trump made this decision. And what I think they were hoping is if they closed the water camps and got the water protectors out, that Trump would let the review for the environmental impact assessment go through, and the route would be changed, and that would be that. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. So the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe chairman, Dave Archibald, issued a statement that they're going to, file some litigation to try to hold Trump to what the Army Corps of Engineers eventually they eventually wanted to do that environmental impact assessment.
It's funny, we sat there and I got to talk with Chase Iron Eyes, and he spoke about, if we're willing to just accept whatever, then they're going to take whatever. They're going to extract whatever. They're going to stop us from speaking if we don't stand up for our speech. They're going to stop us from every single meaningful right that we have, as long as it benefits either the donor class or it benefits the billionaires that are investing in it. And it is like top to bottom, we have no real champions in power. And those champions we do have are relegated to guerrilla warfare, if you will. They're relegated to guerrilla tactics. And quite frankly, what it comes down to is the real resistance is out there blocking traffic. And it's annoying to people. And they can't stand seeing people do this. And it's like, you bad lefties, you dirty socialists, whatever it is they call us, you guys. And, when you take away power, when you take away people's voice, when you stop caring about what's going on in their lives, in their world, and what makes them tick, people resort to whatever. It's like that whole hashtag BAMN, by any means necessary. And, we do have some options available to us, but quite frankly, it doesn't seem like the Trump administration already is in any way, shape, or form concerned with optics. He doesn't care how things look. He doesn't care how it impacts us. And, as much as I was anti-Hillary, and I am super anti-Hillary, by the way, I think it's fair to say Donald Trump is pretty much a monster at this point already, and he hasn't even been in office for a week. And the resistance is just a bunch of paper pansy, Democrats who are more interested in photo ops, with the crowd behind them than they are actually fighting and stopping and doing anything. Let's go ahead and real quickly, I just want to talk about the fake news that has come out where they're basically saying Chuck Schumer is now like the champion of the left. I mean, where are we even getting this stuff from? He's like the arch enemy. Who did they interview to find out he's somehow or another a champion of the left? Can you talk about that?
My girlfriend joked that Chuck Schumer must have wrote that himself. The Hill put out an article claiming that Chuck Schumer is now the champion of the left. And this is the same Chuck Schumer who's voted in favor of every Trump nominee that has been put up to a vote so far. And Schumer is establishment. He gets the most donations out of any senator in the Senate from Wall Street. And that's been his modus operandi since he's been in there. Him and Hillary Clinton representing New York in the Senate, they've been the quintessential establishment politicians, and that's why he was chosen to be the Senate Minority Leader when Harry Reid retired, because he is the establishment darling. That's what he is, and he's really locked on to Bernie Sanders to try to elevate his image because people don't like him. Not only is he boring, but he has strong ties to Wall Street. He has strong ties to Wall Street, and there's nothing to like about him. So you had that article in the Hill go up today. You had an article go up in Politico claiming that Hillary Clinton thought the Women's March was awe-inspiring, but she didn't find it inspiring enough to bother to show up to it. She just tweeted about it. And in contrast, there's nothing about Bernie actually going to a Women's March rally in Burlington. So you're seeing this kind of coverage. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz was interviewed by The Hill, claiming that criticizing Trump's comments about the legitimacy of the election. You're having Debbie Wasserman Schultz, talk about that. I don't think it could be more hypocritical. They really want people to forget about the Democratic primaries. I don't know if you saw it last week. I believe it was Thursday during the DNC candidate forum. They asked a question to all 7 candidates. Do you think the DNC tipped the primaries in favor of Hillary Clinton? No one raised their hand.
That's disgusting.
Of course, it was a gotcha question, but the reason they asked that question is they want to, perpetuate that narrative that, nothing happened, nothing went wrong in the Democratic primaries, and they want to forget all about it. And anytime Bernie Sanders progressives do bring it up, even now they're like, get over it. But they still tout how that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote and Russia still.
What's up with Russia? I mean, just like for real. I mean, like how many distractions, how many lies, how many distortions can they say in like a 5-minute period to gaslight us into having no clue what's going on around us? I mean, it's awful.
Glenn Greenwald pointed out a couple of days ago that nearly every big story about the Russian hacks has either been completely debunked or heavily retracted because the claims in it are unverifiable. You've had that electric grid claim that the Russian government hacked the Vermont electric grid when what really happened was there was some malware code on a laptop in the utility grid that had nothing to do with Russia. It's just you have these pro-Clinton, pro-establishment, mainstream media journalists. They have to propagate this narrative, and they're doing it based on really no evidence, because what has been, Obama promised that there would be a review and that as much possible evidence would be released to the public before he left office. And really what's been released has been kind of a joke. I mean, I think the last thing to be released was a national intelligence report from December 29th. And if people read it, it was really just like a college essay about why RT is bad.
It's so ridiculous. We go to the next thing, and I just want to hit on this right now. In my backyard, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, they're setting up camp now to try to work on blocking the next piece of the pipeline that's coming through here. With all the really, really well coordinated, well attended, protests around the country last night, tonight, you name it. I mean, it seems like the country's spoken pretty loudly. Maybe it's optics, I don't know. But can you talk to me a little bit about I know that Sable Trail's right in your backyard. I mean, there is a whole slew of pipelines ready to go right now. I mean, what is your take on this? I mean, do we have any chance of stopping this stuff?
They're shackling this country in oil pipelines, and a lot of that oil is being exported. And unfortunately, to use the Dakota Access Pipeline as an example, if you dig into who's invested in those pipelines, it's everyone. It's all of Wall Street. Goldman Sachs is heavily invested in Dakota Access Pipeline. Berkshire Hathaway's, which is Warren Buffett's holding company, heavily invested. Vanguard and is heavily invested in that, and they're invested in almost everything. So there's people are saying divest from the banks, divest from the big banks, which you should be doing anyways. I was in the Navy, so I have Navy Federal Credit Union. I've been with that for a while. I don't think anyone should be, giving the big banks any more business. than they should. But literally, the people invested in this, and the investment firms invested in these pipelines, run everything. So they're all connected. It's not just the Republicans who have investments in this. Democrats as well are tainted. That being said, I spoke with Jesse Swineheiser. He's the legal coordinator who represents all the environmental organizations, Sierra Club, Center for Biological Diversity, and he was representing them in TransCanada's lawsuit against the United States government for the Keystone XL pipeline, which he said, basically because of what Trump did yesterday, that lawsuit is basically where they were suing the U.S. government for $15 billion because the Keystone XL pipeline was halted, which is part of the investor system dispute provisions of NAFTA, and that's been included in every trade agreement, nearly every trade agreement since NAFTA, and that was going to be included in the TPP. And just to kind of briefly talk about what that is corporate socialism. Basically, it allows corporations to circumvent environmental regulations. It really undermines the ability to enforce regulations, and in the case of Keystone XL pipeline, if the U.S. government says we don't want you to do that pipeline, the company that loses profit because of that gets to sue, federal governments, state governments, you name it. But because of that, lawsuits are going to be this movement's best friends. We don't have the votes in Senate or the House to really stop the Republicans from doing anything they want unanimously. So, just as during the Bush administration, the environmentalists depended on lawsuits to stop them from, undermining or revoking EPA regulations, from violating the Clean Water Act. So it's going to be all about the lawsuits. So there's been some news. I've seen different things, a lawsuit filed against Trump for ethics, and I think you're going to see lots of lawsuits. The attorneys are going to be making a lot of money, trying to stop everything they can, because it's not going to be the Democrats doing it. It's going to be all these environmental organizations, these progressive organizations, these activists, taking it upon themselves to try to stop what Trump and the Republicans try to do in the next 2 years, likely 4 years, depending on how the 2018 midterm elections go.
It seems to me like we don't really have two parties, because even when we have the opportunity to take them down, we still end up finding a way to shoot ourselves in the foot. There was, just going back momentarily to prove this point, I think there were 13 Republicans or something like that, or 12 Republicans, one way or the other. It ended up being a one-vote swing that had Cory Booker and gang voted to actually put that through. It would have won. There would have been enough Republican support to win it. But because of the Cory Bookers of the world and the Dems in general, we lose out yet again. So how do we, and I'm asking this almost tongue in cheek, because I have my answer, so it's rhetorical, but it's how do we, in any good sense of the word, act like we don't have the votes? I mean, the Democrats have proven themselves co-conspirators. They've proven themselves inept to impact anything meaningful. I really feel like the country is at a point where the only possible way to affect change really is mass civil disobedience. I don't see any way through the electoral process at this point to do anything. Elizabeth Warren, when I see people champion Elizabeth Warren, I swear on my life, I immediately see this. Like when I look at them, I see this gigantic L on their forehead, and it's like a neon flashing light of just saying, I will believe anything you tell me. You don't even have to try. I will believe anything. She's a Democrat, and therefore I love her. She's a woman, therefore I love her. She puts her fist in the air and fights Donald Trump on Twitter, so I love her. give me a fucking break, man. I mean, at what point in time will we care enough about our children, care enough about our planet, care enough about our own personal lives, and hell, the animals of the field, the friggin' birds of the air, the fish of the sea, whatever. When are we going to care enough that we take it into our own hands and stop making excuses for people like Elizabeth Drug Warren? I mean, seriously, it's gotten to the point now where I'm just animated and I'm frustrated. I know we're not really prepared to talk about the Justice Democrats right now, but I'm going to go ahead and take a shot across the bow. I see a whole lot of selling out already, sheepdogging people back into a situation where it is untenable. Do I hope they do well? Do I hope that it's not a facade? Do I hope for good things? Absolutely. Do I believe it? When I see the same people that champion Hillary Rodham Clinton trying to lead this thing, not on your life. Now, I'm open to being surprised. I'm definitely open to being surprised. But fool me once, you know what I mean? Fool me twice, So just quickly, what is your take on the present state of the resistance, if you will, within the establishment? Is there a resistance at all?
It's a joke. I mean, the resistance is the people. I think we need to stop